Farmer sitting up on his seat.
I'm not a farmer, at least not most of the time, and I'd really prefer you not to be too rude about my figure. It's a very basic tractor image, but quite an accurate one. And this is one of the machines that set that pattern. A Ferguson TE20, the 1950s version of a family of tractors known to farmers and their children as a little grey Fergie. I'm sitting in what might be described as a rest home for little grey Fergies, John Popplewell's yard at Snelland in Lincolnshire. But just a couple of miles down the road, close to the old airfield at Wickenby, an event took place that proved that these historic machines still have a great deal of life left in them. I'll see you there.
The site was West Alby Manor, owned by John and Sue Rainthorpe, who made enough land available for over 100 grey Fergies to plough simultaneously, and with any luck get an entry in the Guinness Book of Records. At least the plan started as a simple scheme to get a lot of Fergies all working at the same time, but if you gather together enough enthusiasts, you can be sure they'll want to swap experiences, admire each other's equipment, and pass on ideas about machinery, services and repairs. The end result was that as well as a field full of working machines, there was also a display area with one or two rather choice examples. Just to prove that not all Fergies were grey, this road sweeping version was yellow. And quite a few others were showing up in the grey and gold, or red and grey colours of the later Massey Ferguson variants, including a four-wheel drive MF35 that attracted a lot of interest, as did the half-track version, not quite as exotic as the three half-track Fergusons that went to the South Pole in 1953, but quite an unusual machine, as was this export model from a French vineyard. Sadly, it hadn't come with any samples, or at least nobody told me about them if there were. Very sensibly, the display was lined up alongside the tea, trade and talk area. Someone had brought along an old wreck waiting to be sold for spares, or at least we thought it was an old wreck until the owner appeared. After that, I was prepared to believe almost anything about these amazing little machines, the history of which goes back over 60 years to the legendary black tractor built by Harry Ferguson to demonstrate the Ferguson system, the combination of a three-point linkage and hydraulic control that is still the basis of implement attachment to this day. Ferguson himself never did make tractors commercially. They were always built by someone else using his system. In the 1940s, it was Ford, on the basis of a famous 1938 handshake deal with Henry Ford that fell apart after the war, when Ferguson got Standard to build the British TE20 series. The oldest machine on the site, a Ferguson A from the 1930s, was made by the David Brown organisation.
I've known about it for about 20 years, sitting in London in a garden, and a month or two ago the gentleman wanted to clear his garden up, so he offered it to me, which I of course bought it straight away, and we got it going. We've had to do a bit of work on it very quickly to get it here, put some rings in, and we only did that day before yesterday, and she seems to be running quite well. I'm very pleased with it. Yeah. Well, I paid £1,000. That's paid what the man asked me for it. Yeah. Well, I want to get it back if I can as near as possible, or well, I'd like to have it exactly as it come out of the factory. This might be a bit of a tall order, but I would say we shall have to spend a couple of thousand. The radiator alone, I mean, they're talking about £1,000 to do the radiator, which has got to be done. But otherwise, there's nothing else fundamentally wrong with it.
And when you've got it, what will you do with it?
Keep it. Go to events like this. I mean, that's just lovely. It's just ideal. But I do intend doing some vintage ploughing matches. That's what I really wanted it for in the first place.
Having a classic veteran like that on site was enough to gladden the heart of any tractor enthusiast, but especially that of a member of the Ferguson Club, which was heavily involved in the organisation of the Grey Ferguson Challenge. They saw the event as a tribute to Harry Ferguson himself.
I think beyond everything else, the fact that here we are, 50 years or more after the first one was made, and nearly 50 years after many of the TE20s were made, these are tractors that are still usable today, that they are still engineered in such a way that they are still, many of them, good tractors, and that a great many of us in this field today, like myself, and many, many others, are still using them commercially on our farms today. I think the tribute goes to Harry Ferguson, every time. It's only now beginning to be appreciated in a general sense that the Ferguson element was the consistent part of these inventions, that the modern farm tractor, of which you see other examples in the field, of the really modern stuff like over there, still owes its origins back to this system that Harry Ferguson invented. And therefore it is that constant theme of invention, innovation and excellence that applies to the Ferguson Brown, the Ford Ferguson and the TE20, whether it was made by Massey Harris Ferguson or made by the Standard Motor Company or whoever. Right, that excellence is consistently Ferguson, and now people can see it, looking back. The core of the Ferguson system is two elements. One element is the means whereby the work is attached to the prime mover. The work being the implement, the plough in the case of all these tractors here today, or other implements, and it is the linkage which was a key Ferguson patent, an invention, the converging three-point linkage, whereby the implement, although mounted and fully integrated with the tractor, follows the tractor's front wheels as if it were pulled from those wheels or from a pointer between those wheels. And the second element is that having attached it in such an integrated way and in a way that is engineering-wise efficient, it's controlled automatically by the Ferguson system hydraulics. So not only do the hydraulics actually do the effort of lifting the implement up and down for turning and for work, but it automatically regulates the depth by reference to the draft of the implement, that is the pull of the implement, or the effort to pull it through the ground. And it is those two patents, the converging three-point linkage patent, which came in about 1928, and the master patent of the hydraulic system, which came in 1925.
Admiration for Harry Ferguson's technical achievements was a reason I was often given for people being fond of his tractors, although some of the owners did point out that he couldn't claim all the credit.
It's a 1941 Ford 9 NAN. It's one of the early Grey Fergus, as they're called, but really it's a Fordson. They were made from 1939 till 47, when the Grey Fergie took over. It was made by Standard Motor Company. But that one, in particular, it's half of the Ford V8 Pilot engine, which was a V8 engine. It was chopped down the middle, and they used the 4 cylinders from one side. So that's basically the engine. It's a Ford engine with a Ferguson system, built by Henry Ford. It was an early tractor, and it was a nice tractor. It's a bit more unusual than just a Grey Ferguson. The forerunner of the Grey Ferguson, and the first production tractor that actually had a three-point linkage on, an independent one.
Dave Boyles only uses his tractor for ploughing matches these days, but others regard them as everyday tools, even if the reasons for buying were sometimes tinged with nostalgia.
Because of a love of old machinery anyway. I've got old rope making machinery and stationary engines and things. Plus I have a very small farm and I'm an engineer by trade. And I remembered Fergus from my early days, sort of in 8, 9, 10-year-old days, and fancied one of these because it's small and will do the job I want to do. Turns very tight. I've got mowers, potato spinners, 3-row ridger, what else we've got? Grass mower, hay equipment. It does everything. Every time there's a job, this is the tractor. It's the only one we have. It ploughs. It's quite heavy land where we are. I've got a single farrow plough that we use when we need to, the 2 farrow when the land's a bit softer.
So how long have you been involved with the Grey Fergus?
30 years. In fact, that is service, sales to the farming community and industrial users as well. But before that, in my farming life, which ended in 1962, But the first grey Fergie we had was in 1948, and we also was running the Fordson standard tractor at that time as well. But the Fergie proved to be a more versatile tractor, more versatile on the land, getting jobs done. This is why it proved to be such an outstanding tractor.
But people don't just respect the Fergies, they like them, they even love them.
They do.
What's the attraction?
I think mainly because even farmers' children, sons, daughters, they can get on them, they're light, they're easy, they can drive them, even if it's only pulling a trailer or topping paddocks, or even round paddocks with people that's got horses, anything like that. It certainly fits in. It fits in with the everyday lifestyle that country people have, and that's why people love them.
At last we had the admission. People do love these little machines, and that affection brought some of the participants a long way.
We've had a gentleman over from Holland. He came over. We've had them down from Aberdeen. We've had a tractor over from Northern Ireland, Devon. So really all parts of the country, and we've had this particular gentleman over from Northern Ireland. Very pleased to see him.
Most of the people came for 2 days over a weekend, and the plan was to have 2 tries at establishing a record of over 100 machines. The rules were simple and mostly concerned with verification.
We had to have 2 people who were not connected with a club to judge it, to make sure all the tractors were there. We have to send in the newspaper cuttings from the newspapers to say it was done. And I think that was all she really stipulated.
The first run, on the Saturday, could be said to have set a record, but it didn't make that magic 100. That did cause some concern, even to the man who could, in theory, have solved the problem single-handed.
Well, we've about 150 still at the yard in all sorts of conditions, you know, from really rough ones up to, you know, like night new still, yes. But we've only actually brought 5 of our own today.
Only 5 of their Fergies at the challenge, but 150 of them back at John's yard. It's a collection that's taken a long time to build up.
We've had the little Fergies from, you know, in the early 40s, and saw the way they was going, you know, being broken up and going for very little money, and it just got from there, and we got such a name, you know, all over the country, you know, into Scotland and everywhere. Did we need, you know, want the tractors sooner than go for scrap, and that's when I did buy the bulk of the collection.
But they don't just come in to John and his son Mark. They go out again, restored to quite beautiful condition.
Mark's come into the business the last 4 years and got his, you know, got the job together, you know, and they will restore them now, you know, as to more or less pristine condition again now. You know, everything, engines right through. You can, you know, bring the money down to suit anybody's pocket really, you know, whatever pocket they've got. If they want it really mint, well then you're looking at quite a lot of money today. But just an ordinary nice little tractor, still you know, only around £500.
Fortunately, there were enough people around who'd spent their 500s, or more often, done a lot of work after spending rather less in the first place. So confidence was high on the Sunday morning. But just to make sure, divine assistance was called on, in the form of a plough blessing service conducted by the local vicar.
Praise be God for the men and women who work on the farm and in the field, for their hope and courage in days of difficulty and disappointment, for those who, often unnoticed and unsung, provide their fellow countrymen with the means of life and play their part in the salvation of town and country, for steady ploughing and harrowing and sowing year after year, and for the skill of those who reap and stack and build the rick, for all who take the true craftsman's pride in the work they do. Praise be God for the rich soil of the countryside and drills drawn straight across the field, for the green corn springing out of the earth and the warm sweetness of a growing rain, for the strength of tractors and all machines that ease the labour of man and beast, for the seed brought to the harvesting, and the harvested wheat transformed into bread. For the bread given us as our daily food, and for that bread which on God's altar assures us of God's presence.
Reverend Father, in the name of these gathered here, I bring you this sheaf of corn, the first fruits of our harvest. We desire you to offer it on our behalf to Almighty God as the first of his gifts to us this season, and to pray for his blessings in the ingathering of our crops.
Reverend Father, in the name of those gathered here, I bring you this loaf, newly baked, made from the ears of ripe corn. Will you offer it for us to God and pray for his blessing on our homes and on our families, on the food we eat and the work we do, and on all the daily life of our village?
With cheerful heart, I am most ready to do as you desire, in a matter that so well becomes God's children and is so pleasing, I am sure, to God himself. We offer to thee, O God, this corn, the first fruits of our harvest, in token and gratitude in our hearts. We offer to thee, O Lord, this loaf, made from the ears of the ripe corn, in humble acknowledgement of our dependence on all thy gifts. All things come of thee, and of thine own have we given thee.
Reverend Father, the plough is the sign of all our labour in the countryside. The plough is the foundation of the farmer's work. Before the soil can be broken, or the seed sown, or the green corn grow, or the grain be reaped, or the bed breaked, or the people be fed, we must plough the field. So at the beginning of another year, we bring this plough, that you may give your blessing to it and to us, and to all the work and workers on the farms of our parishes.
God speed the plough and the ploughman, the farm and the farmer, machine and beast and man. God speed the plough, the beam and the mouldboard, the slade and the side cap, the share and the coulters. God speed the plough in fair weather and foul, in success and disappointment, in rain and wind, or in frost and sunshine. God speed the plough. We stand to sing, we plough the fields and scatter the good seed on the land. We plough the fields and scatter the good seed on the land, but it is fed and watered by God's almighty hand. He sends the snow in winter, the warmth to swell the grain, the breezes and the sunshine, and soft refreshing rain. All good gifts around us are sent from heaven above. Then thank the Lord, oh thank the Lord for all his love.
Try and make the very best of this, which will be our only opportunity now to get it right and to set the standard for anybody who wishes to attempt to do something like this in the future. So one or two things for you drivers in particular about what we're going to do next. We're going to try and lead with the Ferguson Brown, and the consequence of this is we're going to be going probably fairly slowly. So I would suggest you all use first gear on the other tractors, that is the T's and 9Ns and the 35s. Well, second gear on the 35s probably. Yesterday we had some tractors that overheated or for whatever reason dropped out. We'd be very grateful if those of you who had trouble or you expect trouble, please, can you go to the back of the line? And the reason for this is that if you have to stop, it'll have the minimum disruption on those ahead of you who can keep going. Can you keep as close to the tractor in front of you as possible without allowing you the possibility of running into him should you be looking over your shoulder while he stops? I can only suggest that given we are not pressed for space, we want you as close as possible because it'll look more impressive, but we do want you to be safe. I would suggest that probably half a tractor's length.
And so it began. A steady stream of tractors moving up to the start line. The Ferguson Brown is in the lead. One of the Fords close behind. Another of the four-wheel drives in the first batch. They're all doing well, tucked in nicely behind each other, but still only a third of the way there. Now there's a rarer sight even than the four-wheel drives, the only lady driver at the event.
Can you stand back? Stand back!
It was certainly a good day for anyone with shares in film or videotape manufacturers. They couldn't have asked for better ploughing conditions. Light soil, recently damp, just perfect. Don't get confused by the numbers on the tractors. We haven't got to the magic 100 ploughing yet. Well over the 100 were booked in for the challenge, but they didn't all turn up. That gap between 121 and 130 wasn't the only one. So much for the wreck to be broken for spares. Now this could be a problem. If you don't know whether you're coming or going, you might not be able to work out whether you've been there or not. Hello, what's this? It could be a crisis developing. Something's jammed the line, but help is at hand. I'm not sure if it's a case of many hands make light work or too many cooks spoiling the broth. No, we're okay. Back to work. The ploughing continues. The final few, completing the first leg, swinging across the headland, ready to join their colleagues on the way back up the field. And as they all finished the run, the only question was, did they make that magic 100? The judges went off to confer, while we talked to one or two special cases. That solitary lady driver, for instance.
I got talking to a couple of members and asked one of them if they needed a driver. And so I got the opportunity yesterday and the opportunity today, and I'm fair chuffed. I'm a wee bit disappointed there wasn't a couple more, but well, the fair sex can get in it some way. The last time I drove a wee grey Fergie was 10 years ago when my husband was teaching me to drive in one. So I suppose that's what got me started, and then the husband's got one at home as well. But she's in a wee bit of disrepair at the minute. She needs all tuned up and the engine and all that unseized, but we'll get her on the go again, and then we'll get her into the fields, back to her, hopefully her glory.
Margaret was joint furthest traveller.
Come from Annalong in County Down, Northern Ireland, and it took us 14 hours travelling across. By the time we travelled up to Larne, then came across in a boat to Stranraer. Travelled 300 odd mile from Stranraer down to here. Just wanted to take part in this Ferguson challenge, seen it advertised in the local papers in Northern Ireland, and we wanted to take part in it, just to be a part of it. Something, we wouldn't have fields the size that would accommodate 100 tractors ploughing in one lane, and it's something that I just would have liked to see. That's what brought me, just to see that.
This kind of thing could be catching. How about that wreck? What's the asking price?
Well, I'd work from 350 down. In fairness, you know, one doesn't realise the popularity of them until you come to a sort of show like this. As far as I was concerned, it's just a piece of machinery stood there for my purpose. And it's not until, as I say, you come to a show like this, you realise that perhaps they have got a value, more than one would understand or even credit. And therefore I've got two here actually. The other one is not for sale, and there's no point in having one just stood. I might as well get rid of it and put that money towards doing the other one up.
And have you had any inquiries today?
I've had lots of silly inquiries because unfortunately I blew that tyre as I pulled into the field. There was a tremendous bang, but that didn't help its value.
Sadly, if you just noted down the phone number, that particular Fergie is now spoken for. And don't forget, even when you've got one, you may still need to tweak it.
It started when they were stopped ploughing, you know, and wetted it up.
What exactly is the problem?
Plugs.
Do you get many problems with this machine?
Not really, no. No. It isn't used all that much, only for occasions like this, but it's asking a lot of them, really. They're old, aren't they?
Do you use it in fact very much apart from these events?
No, no. I've got about 4 of them.
Why? What is the attraction to you of owning 4 of these?
I don't know, I think we try to get one of each model. I've got a very early one as well, and all petrol, which is all restored. But I don't bring it out here to dirty it up. But they, I don't know, I suppose we grew up with them, and we tend to, you know, follow them like that. They were really a marvellous invention, weren't they? From the old standard Fords and horses. They nearly like a private motor car, I suppose, in the day.
At last, the counting stopped, and the organisers pronounced themselves satisfied.
We've actually have achieved our target of 100 tractors ploughing in a line, and now we will see whether the Guinness Book of Records are interested in accepting that as a possibility of a future challenge, because somebody's got to do it first for somebody else now to challenge it. So it's not been done before.
Well, yesterday we only got to about 75, and I was really disappointed last night. I said to Grace, we're just going to be short by about 10, and other than fetching some out our own tractors, which we didn't want to do. But today they've rallied round, and we've been very lucky with the weather. We got started early, and the job went while it was still fine. We've been very lucky today, and just done it. We got 139 entries, and we got about 104 going today. But we thought we'd just have a few more in, but you know, a lot of them's come a long way, like from Devon, and you know, it's expecting a lot to come, you know, to bring those tractors all those miles. Yeah, and we actually had one or two locals. One's gone downhill sideways on the stand, and another one's bumped 4 cars in Horncastle. So we've lost 2 locals really.
If somebody now wants to break your record, have you got a brief piece of advice for them?
Well, I think they'll need a lot of luck to collect a lot more than that together, yeah.
Well, they're such a big part of agriculture, the agricultural past, and they're such handy tractors that you can do anything with. It's a pleasure to use them.
Whenever I was a child, on our farm at home, we had a Fergie, and I grew up not really old enough to be able to drive it myself, but I remembered it, and whenever I got old enough to be able to drive with different oil tractors, I always fancied a wee Fergie. They always were a pretty popular tractor at home in County Down.
I think we are very grateful to Harry Ferguson. I think every farmer and every person in the world should be, because he has made a major contribution to feeding the world. 2 years before I was born, we were within 2 weeks of starvation. The Germans were sinking so much shipping that we were within 2 weeks of starvation. The Ferguson system was making a contribution to world agriculture then, particularly in America, where the Ford Ferguson was in production. And the idea that we would move into a world where we had so much food we didn't know what to do with it, and we were actually dumping it as we do now, was absolutely unbelievable. And the Ferguson system has played a very major part in that achievement.